Okay, good morning and welcome to Iyun with Benzion, Kesubos stuff, Pei Zion, number 87. An interesting shir for you today. The Gemara on Pei Zion and Aleph talks about what is the halakhic status of a woman, even though technically a woman who's manning her husband's business during his lifetime, right? Technically, we learned in Daf Pei Vav that the husband is always entitled to make her take a shvuah or neder that she didn't what? She didn't treat his business improperly. We didn't really clarify exactly what he's making her take another shvuah. The Mishnah talked about if he wanted to exempt her from that shvuah. Our Gemara today talks about after the husband died and his Yorshim want to make her take a shvuah if she's still CEO of the business. So this is where the Gemara comes in. The Gemara says, towards the middle top of Pezayim and Aleph, Rav Masna Amar, Amar Rav Yudam Rav Ala Betropia Shanas B'Chaya Abal, Aval Be'Misa Lekpura Mashbin Allah. If she was CEO after his death, once he dies, his property, his business transfers to his Yorshim, they can make her take a shvuah, even before the kvura, if she's still involved in the business. Rav Masna Amar, that's how he paskin. I feel ben Misa Lekpura Mashbin Allah. You don't take a shvuah. The Amrin Hardai Lekargel Mizon Lekpura Mashbinina Below Achrasta. What's his proof to this? That normally when Benzion wants to collect for Yisomim, they need cash for Yisomim to pay for their food, orphans, to pay for their head tax, has to be paid immediately, or for burial. One of them died. You can sell property, even though normally you have to wait 30 days, list it for 30 days in order to get the best bidder, the highest auction price. If you need them cash right away, Benzion needs it for the orphans right away. They're in charge of taking care of the orphans, this Benzion that was appointed, or a general Benzion in the city. So they can sell right away to get the money immediately, even though they're going to lose out money on the real estate. So kvura, burial, is one of those things. You need money right away to buy a burial plot. So here also, even though technically a woman doesn't have to bury her husband, right? Only a husband has to bury his wife. A woman doesn't have to bury her husband. Technically, they had a good marriage. The wife is going to want to be in charge of that. So therefore, she, to get money for a burial plot, she is entitled to sell the property for a lower price. Similarly, Rav Masna reasons, based on Ardai's logic, that over here, where she's the CEO of the business between the death and the kfura. Now, usually the death and the kfura is not a big amount of time, but a large amount of time. However, the Queen of England, she was buried 10 days later. I don't know, sometimes you can't bury them for a couple of days. You want to fly the body to Israel or something like that. So that period where she's in charge of the business, so the way ArtScroll explains it is that it's a hectic time during that time. So she can't be, we can't be so medactic with her. We can't be so precise with her and say you have to take a shvuah that you didn't handle the business correctly. Now, up until now, I've explained, and I think the ArtScroll and I think the Rishonim have explained that the shvuah, when she's a CEO of his business, that she took money, or worried that she took money. She pocketed some money. She put it in her own private account from his business. That's why she take a shvuah, that you didn't do that. You didn't steal from his account. However, from this Gemara, it doesn't seem like that. Tosas asked the question over here. Tosas says, where is this Tosas? Tosas wonder, in footnote number 13, let her at least swear that she did not embezzle anything. Well, first let's go back to number 13. Since in these hectic circumstances, she very likely caused some loss by selling for less than full value, we do not impose the oath because this would lead her to swear falsely. Tosas wonder, let her at least swear that she did not embezzle anything. Therefore, Tosas explained, we do not impose an oath due to the concern that a widow, fearing the oath, will refrain from selling property and will leave her husband unburied. That's Tosas' resolution to this problem. Tosas says there's two parts. There's her business dealings, and then there's stealing from her business. And Tosas says that's the shvuah we're talking about, is stealing from the business. So even though it might be hectic, she might have to sell his property, maybe do a business transaction with the business to get money right away and sell things at less than their value. The shvuah is meant for stealing things. So that she doesn't have a right to do just because, she has to buy a burial plot for him. She's not going to steal from him to her personal account. So Tosas has to give an answer. But I'd like to suggest, based on this question, it's a very strong question Tosas is asking, is that really, maybe we were wrong all along. Then maybe that the shvuah and the neder that he is allowed to impose on his wife, who's managing his company, who's the CEO of his company, is just that she didn't take proper heed and proper caution in treating his business with the proper respect and the proper attention that it was due. She was negligent in earning a profit. She didn't do her job. He thought she's a really smart lady. She has an accounting degree. She has an actuary degree. She's really on top of it. She was, she graduated summa cum laude from Harvard University. But at the end of the day, maybe she doesn't like her husband so much. So that's why you can make her take a shvur and neder that you lived up to the hype. You lived up to your business acumen, and you weren't slacking off on the job. And that's the shvur we're talking about over here. And that's why the Gemara says, Rav Masa says over here, it's a very hectic time over there. So because she's so, her mind is on burying her husband. She's distraught that her husband just died. So therefore, it's too hard for her to manage her business properly. And if she made some wrong business decisions during those times, that's not her fault. She's in a tough situation over here. And even if she didn't sell property to bury her husband, just even managing her husband's business not to her potential, not the way it should be managed, negligence in business management, it's not her fault at that point, and therefore you can't make her take a shvua. She's not responsible for that. It has nothing to talk about this shvua, and the same thing, pilcha v'isasa, we talked about in the previous Mishnah. Leja says if you make her take a shvua on when she makes dough for you or when she weaves a scarf for you, again, it's not because she stole some of the dough and put it in her pocket, or she stole some of the wool and put it in her pocket. It's because she didn't live up to her potential. She went to school to learn how to sew, to learn how to bake. She went to baking school, cooking school, culinary school, and she's not living up to the hype. She's not doing it. So Lezer says, I don't know if he possibly Lezer, but he says you can even make her the shvua that she did her job properly. She lived up. You paid for a culinary school. At least you should be able to do that. We don't possibly Lezer, I don't think, but at least she should be careful in that. That's what we're talking about. Not that she's stealing dough or she's stealing wool, that she's not living up to her potential and doing these jobs, in the proper way. She's, we're learning Maseches Challah. She's putting too much water in the flour. She has to throw it out. So that's what we're talking about over here. The other shvua is that she didn't manage the business properly, and according to Belezer, she didn't manage her baking skills properly. And that's what we're talking about. And the Gemara makes sense over here. Since the hectic time, she's not expected to be, so careful in her business dealings. I hope you enjoyed today's shir. See you in the next one.